Coogs' house. The Houston Cougars survived and got into the next round of the Big 12 tournament after a big win over Colorado. But are they about to walk into a track meet of a scoring game or a slugfest and rock fight?
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a bonus edition of Locked On Cougs. I'm host Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Houston Cougars. If you're a everyday listener, first time of the day, or just a hater who comes to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Appreciate making your first listen each and every day. If you want to join the conversation, but you don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below what you would pick as a food item to represent Houston in the food court there in Kansas City. Every school's got something. What would you pick to represent the University of Houston? Today's show is brought to you by Nissan. It's a short bonus episode. We also got a crossover out today with Jake Hatch of Locked On BYU Cougars to help break down this matchup. But I wanted to kind of make sure we touched on what all happened here. We'll talk about what happened with Colorado, get a little more clarity on what's going on with Joan Roberts, and then what the thoughts on our BYU going into the conference semifinal. So if you did not hear on at some point Thursday, Houston did beat Colorado 77-68 to move into the semifinal round. Colorado fought hard, 16 seed, making it that far is impressive, but Houston was ultimately just too really talented. I don't even know if physical is the right phrase. Colorado, I thought, was impressive with some of their big guy play in that game. You saw a career game if you're Colorado out of Yakimovsky. Yakimovsky. I'm going to get that right. But ultimately, Houston's ability to kind of shut down Julian Hammond really led the way. And then on their own end, that was interesting that each of the three backcourt players kind of took their turn in this one at the start. It was the very start, I guess, as LJ Cryer hit a couple threes out the gate. Emanuel Sharp had 19 points, and most of those happening in the first half. Miles Uzan had 14 points, all of his happening in the second half. And what they were doing in this, I thought was interesting in a lot of ways, was they got each guard kind of at different points into high screen rolls with a lot of space for the roll man, and then the roll man would attack the rim really, really hard. So Javier, JoJo Tugler, Joan Roberts, when he's healthy and in, would attack the rim really, really hard. And Colorado seemed very dead set on preventing those guys from scoring. Those three combined for just 18 points. Emanuel Sharp had more than that on his own. Sharp did have a couple of heat checky kind of three looks as well. Was 6-10 overall, 4 of 7 from behind the arc. So I don't mean to say that he didn't just also catch a swing in a swinging kind of pattern, catch and jack a jumper, but the goal, especially for what Uzan was doing, was to get on down, kind of gets past that guy on his screen, and then assuming Tugler or somebody would pull defense with him, attack the rim. Really impressed by Uzan's game in the second half of this one. It's like someone got in his ear at halftime. I was like, you got to get involved, right? Really, really big second half out of him to get right after a few days off. Impressive victory from start to finish. Houston did a couple different things to kind of keep Colorado at arm's length in this one. I think it got as close as 5, if I'm remembering correctly, in the final 10 minutes or so. But Houston really kind of kept Colorado at bay. Colorado's also on the third game in as many days and played last weekend. Probably a little tired, right? But Houston shook the rust off and got the job done. Survive and advance is the most important thing. Kelvin Sampson said as much after the fact too. I don't mean that he said this in a disrespectful way, but someone asked him what positive he pulled out of the win, and he was like, that we won, right? Like, why does it have to be more complicated than that sometimes, especially when you get to March? It's just about finding a way to win, play the next day, finding a way to win again. Now, I will say, as I looked at this, I got excited at different points in the first half with the Emanuel Sharp heat checks or whatever. Ultimately, I think that a lot of people and fans got really excited to see Mercy Miller minutes. Mercy played 9 minutes in this one, and they were frankly like early in the game minutes. They were not like inconsequential or anything. He only had 2 points. I think had a couple of box scores. He had 3 rebounds. Mercy's a fan favorite as a freshman because He is a natural scorer, and so people want to like see the rest of the game continue to develop because he is so much fun to watch for the basketball. His high school high tape is super bananas. He's a high-end recruit. He's going to develop into something really, really special. He's just in a kind of log jam of a very talented upperclassman heavy backcourt right now, right? I mean, LJ Cryer, fifth-year senior, Miles Uzan, third year as a starter in the Big 12, Manuel Sharp, I guess his second year starting. His first year was kind of like a six-man-y kind of role. That's a lot of minutes played in front of Mercer. And you factor in like the backup guards, Terrence Arsenault is also, I guess, age-wise, a junior, though he missed a year, the Achilles tear. And then Malik Wilson has been around the block a few times himself. Like, these guys all have a lot of mileage on Mercy. So as he fits in, I think fans will be excited with what they get out of him. I think the sub I was most excited to see play, though, was Malik. Now, Malik had just 2 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. He had a couple steals. The box score has him with 3 steals. I thought Malik's energy when he came off the bench, played 24 minutes. He really sped up the game. In a game where Houston was constantly fighting to shake rust off, Malik was pretty impactful in that way, as he always does. He finds a way to impact the game beyond just the scorebook. But the impact that's beyond the scorebook, the thing people are taking away from this game, is the Juwan Roberts injury. So let's break that down a little bit. He came off a dribble handoff in one of those kind of screen actions we're talking about, the dribble handed off instead of a screen, but it functionally feels like the same. And he kept it and it turned the corner and attacked the rim. And as he attacked the rim, he stepped on some Colorado Buffalo's ankle and rolled his ankle and kind of been getting tripped up, sprawled out and fell over by the Houston bench, where trainer John Houston got on his foot pretty quickly to check it out. Juwan Roberts stayed on the ground for a minute. And I think a lot of people, like, it felt really intense at the time because he was just like collapsed on the ground by the Houston bench, and there was no like indicator about what was going on. Roberts would then get up, he walked to the back, walked to the bench, walked to the back of the locker room, got an x-ray. X-ray was negative. They showed him like doing little toe raises, and they're watching the game on TV while I was waiting for the results. He came back to the bench, sat on the bench. I think they said they taped it, and he watched the rest of the game, right? I don't think there's any way he was going back in that game. They did a report that he was probable to return, and I don't believe he did. I say all that to say that while we're all holding our breath, because that's scary, especially because he's on the ground for so long and all that. I think him being on the ground for a long time was more of a function of where on the floor he fell, and that he was just by the bench already. Didn't have to get up and walk over to the bench or anything, right? And also, I think that we all understand how important Juwan is to this team, and so I think that was part of it too, right? Now, I say all that to say that I think he's going to be fine. I think it's a sprain, roll, ankle kind of thing that happened in any drill, any practice. And I also think he'll probably actually suit up on a Friday. And I think that truthfully, it's going to be like a shock to some people once it's a Friday. But this dude went through a lot more painful kind of stuff last season and played every game, just about every game, I should say. And I just feel like the Warrior stuff he's got going on between his ears are going to keep him in the rotation here. Now, if they get up at some point big against BYU, will they cut his minutes? I'm sure. Will he put his foot in ice as soon as the game's over? I'm sure. But this team is wired in a way that they're going to fight and claw and scrap and play anytime you put them on the floor. And he is no different. He's the leader of that in a lot of ways, frankly. And so I feel like he's going to play. He's going to play hard. And I would be surprised. It would be surprising to me in a Kelvin breaking his norms if they didn't. Juwan Roberts. I don't mean that this like try and scare and intimidate BYU folks. I bet we don't hear anything outside of like probable until the starting lineups get announced. But I bet he starts and goes the whole time. It wouldn't personally with an ankle injury. I actually kind of feel like it makes sense to start if you're going to play at all, because then you warm up and you just get to get out there and keep playing straight after the warm up, as opposed to warming up, getting your ankle loose, and then going and sitting down and waiting your turn to go in, right? Then that ankle just tightens back up while you sit. And not that it's super. I think it would make sense to go and roll out and starting lineup. We'll see how his minutes get impacted. He's got a heavy task at hand, though, against BYU. He'll be covering, I'd imagine, for my money, I think he'll be covering one of the better players there at BYU in Richie Saunders. Before we get to that and all the things that entails in this BYU Houston semifinal matchup. I do want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at Nissan, because we're all about stats here at the Locked On Podcast Network, and they're all about stats too, because numbers don't lie. When it comes to all new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers on an MVP level be able to grow to tow up to 8,500 pounds and quite literally carry the whole team plus the gear. That's a lot of weight wherever you go. It's turbo powered, the twin turbo V6 engine, delivering strength and performance, handle back roads, highways, all the things in between, for up to 8 people. The Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. And whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventure to new heights with an all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. Progress with Locked On Coogs. You're talking about Houston, finishing up Colorado, getting into BYU, and I am anxious to see what this game turns into. BYU is an interesting combination in that they shoot a lot of threes and do some very technical things very well, and have done those better as the season's gone on. And they also have a lot of size and weight and can get really physical really fast. And Houston caught them early in the season, early January. New head coach, a lot of new players. Houston caught them, frankly, at a good time. BYU has won 9 games in a row. Jaeger Dimmon's probably a top 10 pick. Richie Saunders is a full first-team all-conference kind of guy. Keba Keita, the big man, is pretty intense. It looks like a Houston Cougar to me, frankly, the way he's out there playing. He's like one of those classic kind of Houston Cougar-esque bigs out there, and really, really impressed with what they've got going on right now. Beat Arizona, beat Iowa State twice in the last month. They're good. And my thought is this going to become a game where both teams' shooting efficiency is going to make it a high-scoring game? Houston's got Cryer, Houston's got Sharp, Houston's got Uzan, and up there at BYU, they've got Saunders, but they've also got Dallin Hall. Trevor Nell got hot in the first game Houston played them, right? And so, what does it look like for them? Does this become a 3-point contest because that's the only shot given up? What I'd imagine is Houston follows the same formula that we've seen them follow under Kelvin Sampson before, where they're just give up mid-range jump shots. They have backside guy JoJo Tugler, someone at the rim, and they just are focus on running BYU off of the 3-point line and forcing them into something else. The interesting thing about this BYU team, what's emerged to me in watching them, is that Jaeger Dimon guy as a crazy talented passer, and what that turns into as they attack the rim and do those kinds of things. Now, this could also very easily turn into a BYU says, we've got Richie Saunders, and Houston's like, hey, whose backpack are we jumping in today? I'd imagine that becomes LJ Cryer. I think he wins his matchup in this one. He had just 9 points in the first matchup, was 3-9 from behind the arc. We haven't seen many teams get advantage like that on LJ Cryer twice. I could see him getting a little bit more in on the action, maybe into being 5 of 10 or 5 of 11. Just kind of the way teams don't seem to get him twice in a game. The hero of the first game, though, was Emanuel Sharp for Houston. Terrence Arsenal came in and got 15 off the bench. This was that stretch of the season that Terrence is really, really scoring the ball well. I could see, honestly, a lot of alternating, finding out who that backpack is. I just don't feel like teams get advantage on that LJ Cryer like that twice. Ooh, stumbling over my words there. All that, and then Trevor Nell had 12 points on 4 threes the first time these two teams played, and that was the high man, the only man in double digits for BYU. But again, a very different team. I'd imagine they find someone to get Richie Saunders more involved. Richie's had a much more prolific last month and a half of basketball than he had going into that Houston game. I believe he was a first team all Big 12 kind of athlete. I mean, he's really turned it on here for them they list him at 6'5". I feel like he's taller than 6'5", certainly looks taller than 6'5". But as far as scoring goes this season, so they work backwards. He had 23 against Iowa State in their quarterfinal matchup. He had 23 against Iowa State in Hilton Coliseum in a double overtime game a couple weeks ago. He had 26 against Arizona State, 23 against Arizona, 22 against Kansas, and probably gets more if he plays the whole game. They blew Kansas out. 22 against a talented UCF team. He's found a way to get to the hole a lot and score a lot and kind of use a variety of things along the way. Now, he can shoot the ball, and when he's really on shooting against Arizona State, they have down that he made 6 threes. He's kind of an impossible cover. You just want to get the ball out of his hands. But honestly, he does other things well as putting the ball on the floor and stuff like that. I could see Emanuel getting this one after Emanuel had a VJ Edgecombe matchup. I could also see, based on some movement in their lineup, you could see Houston put something like, do you put a Juwan Roberts on him? Because as far as other starters go, you're going to probably play Milos on Yegor. You're probably also going to look at their starting lineup. And I don't know if they'll start Nell or not, but that's probably a Cryery kind of matchup. Mawat, their power forward, Mawat Mag, he doesn't play a lot. They sometimes play Jaeger at the 4, and I still think I'd probably want Milos on him. Dallin Hall gets a lot of starts as well. So I look at this lineup and it's kind of think like, well, what is BYU going to do? How is it going to dictate what Houston does? But I could see Houston rolling out with some size on Saunders to kind of throw things off. The only matchup I feel certain on is Keba Keita's going to get matched up with JoJo Tugler or Javier Francis, everyone's in. I do feel confident in that one for Houston. I do feel confident in this game for Houston. I know that BYU is talented and streaking, and frankly, they're going to be better in 10 days than they are today. And so, you're just kind of catching them when you catch them. They're a lot better than they were back when Houston saw them at first. I think Houston wins a good game, and I do think this feels like a de facto title game. We'll talk to Jake about that in the Locked On Crosser episode as well, but these feel like two teams that are really, really trending in the right direction and could probably win the whole thing if it came to that. Now, I want to hear what you've got to say. Tell me in the comments down below or find me on social media at Painsworth512, Painsworth 512, wherever you get your social media pleasures these days. But tell me what you think the score of this game is going to be. Let's talk about it a little bit. Also, make sure you tune in. The game is at 6:30 Central Time on ESPN2, I believe. If I'm wrong, someone will correct me, I'm sure, down below. Locked On Coogs, primary Locked On Podcast Network, and we'll be live after the game as well. So make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you know when we're live. Locked On Coogs, primary Locked On Podcast. I'm your team every day, sometimes 2 or 3 times as well. Go Cougs.